framed as a forced choice, like safety or opportunity. Either protect women by keeping them out of night shifts or open the doors and hope the risks somehow even out. The new labor codes attempt to redraw that bargain. They say women can claim the night shift, but on their own terms, with written consent, with safe transport, with lighting security, restrooms and accountability, and with the burden shifting firmly into the account now, I would say, of employers and the state, not individual women, to ensure that the night shifts actually work for women, so that the night actually works safe in the context of women. From IT parks and hospitals to factories, warehouses, newsrooms and gig platforms, night work is now being recast as a legitimate economic space where dignity, pay and protection are meant to go together, not compete with each other. But tonight, the promise meets reality. Because as the government opens a 30 to 45-day window for public feedback on the draft rules, the real test is not what's written in the labor code, but whether women who already work these hours believe the safety net is real. Will safeguards exist beyond corporate campuses and tier 1 cities? And who really is accountable at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when something goes wrong? That's the debate tonight. What I wish to ask is this empowerment or exposure? Is it reform or risk transferred? To discuss this on the show, we have Tara Deshpande, actor, writer. Soumya Misra is an entrepreneur and founder of Avatar. We have Meghna Pant, author and gender rights activist. Pooja Shrivas is an advocate. I'm going to begin with you, Tara, because it's about shifting the cultural narrative as well. Because if women work, women work the night shifts. I have done night shifts several years ago. We continue to, work till late hours as well. What does it really do to ensure that women actually feel safe in terms of the larger cultural context, Tara?
Just like many things in India, we have a law to fight corruption, we have a law to fight sexual harassment, and now we're going to have a new code for working night shifts. But we all know the reality that there are too many roadblocks when it comes to enforceability, when it comes to implementation of codes or laws in this country. Now you talk about safe transport and you talk about street lighting. These are huge issues. We know that in reality, transport is not safe for women at nights. We also know that street lighting is not good at nights. We also know that the concept of consent in India is still something that we are trying to literally push down people's throats. It's very different from what it is in other countries. So to now tell women that, we will provide you with all this, you have to, give your consent without coercion. Where is the buck going to stop when something goes wrong? Who is going to protect these women? Who is going to ensure that the transport is actually safe and the street lighting actually exists and that they are not being coerced into doing something and being told that they won't get promotions and bonuses if they don't give consent to working at nights? I mean, the number of cases of sexual harassment and violence against women during day shifts has spiraled in the last 10 years.
Yes.
So what do you think it's going to be like in the current situation during night shifts?
Okay.
So while it sounds great, it's progressive thinking, I think actually now the onus is being placed on women, and women will now be blamed when they say that they don't want to work these night shifts because they're not happy with the facilities that they're being given.
Okay. But there are real challenges here, Meghna. Your work critiques the patriarchal norms. Does this policy truly advance gender equity, or does it risk exploiting women without addressing the vulnerabilities which exist in multiple sectors?
Absolutely. I think safety has now been outsourced to women's courage. So if we continue like these reforms will fail. But I have to add, Marya, that it's better news that we've woken up to in 2026 than the last few years, where we woke up to names such as Shraddha Walkar being dismembered by her partner. Anjali Singh, if you remember, being dragged for kilometers under a car on New Year's, or Ankita Bhandari, who was pushed to her death in Uttarakhand. So I feel like maybe this is a good start, that at least we're talking about labor law reforms, which are a step forward. But the fact is, it'll only, matter if they move from permission to protection, from laws to actually lived safety of women, and from this kind of token equality that's become so customary to actual structural change. Because I think the question that India must ask now is not, can women work at night? This feels very odious. It feels redundant. The real question is, can India finally take responsibility for keeping women safe while they do this? Because again, what are the safeguards, Marya? I mean, what do they actually look like? Like Tara also pointed out, are they slogans, circulars? Are they posters in HR offices? Real safeguards must look like logistics, right? So we need a few steps, for example, like mandatory escort policies for late shift, not on request, but actually like customary. Then this guaranteed last mile transport, door to door, not just to the main road, the nearest main road. We need verified drivers. We need GPS tracked vehicles. We need well-lit workplaces and parking areas and building exits, not just inside the glass office. More than that, we need these functional panic buttons, not just decorative ones, in every woman's phone that is linked to the local police or the internal response teams. We need emergency phone apps such as this that work not just in certain metros but across states, even in tier 1, tier 2 cities, or even in villages across India. And we must have a redressal mechanism where, first of all, there are 24/7 grievance officers with women also represented on these safety committees, not just interns, but not just symbolic hires, right? Actual people with clear accountability, that if a woman is harmed, the employer is not going to say, okay, this is not our concern, this is outside.
So
let's be honest.
The accountability has to be defined as well. Soumya, as someone who runs a startup, skincare startup, how could these night shift permissions boost female entrepreneurship, and what transport CCTV mandates would you prioritize for employee safety?
Yeah, in fact, at Avatar, where, the businesses that we provide skin treatments at home. So it does involve women not only traveling, but also involve them going to different people's home. And then, we have mapped like, okay, what could worst look like? And then work backwards from there, because, you don't rise up to, oh, this has happened and now we fix our norms. Okay, how do we ensure that whatever works? In our case, it's like going to places, what can go wrong, and then how do you control it? So, be it panic button, be it tracking, okay, where all your employees are, when they are getting late from an appointment and then they need to go home, which would be, in most cases in cities like Bombay, would be like an hour away from office. We make them get dropped at home. We have an Uber for Business partnership where we get verified drivers to do that with our internal tech system tracking it. One person tracking, okay, has everybody gone home? And then on the WhatsApp group, okay, I've reached. So, it's a matter of intent. It's tough to execute, but like if there is an intent, it is not so much to execute, either cost wise or, procedure wise. I do think that, getting women to work at night, letting them work at night is a welcome move. See, the thing is, when we say that, why should women be restricted to move out or be on streets at 9-10 p.m. at night, the idea should be, okay, how do we avoid security threats and not just lock them up at home? Now, the analogy is similar, just in professional setting, that, women should get, there are women who, who probably have figured out their security themselves, but sometimes they are at a disadvantage because of, the other labor regulations which were around them. So at least there is a choice now. And then, there are things like OT, double pay, CCTV. So I think labor code wise, it is a welcome move, but what should be scrutinized and tracked and monitored in detail, whether all safety measures are taken.
Yeah, so the devil lies in the details, certainly. I'm going to come back to all of you for more thoughts, but let me bring in Pooja as well. Pooja, could labor code registration be mandated via courts for safety net access? And what precedents challenge employer non-compliance with overtime or transport rules? There are several such examples.
Good Good evening. However, it will fail as a step if women's security is not taken into account as an infrastructure. So, employers and the society should ensure that women remain safe to participate in the nation building process.
That's right. So women should be safe in participating in this entire process while we put the onus of women's safety on women herself, Tara Deshpande. Many would say that, and I agree with Meghna when she says that we have entered 2026 on a progressive note. There have been extremely depressing news coming year after year, particularly of women harassment, every night, during the New Year celebration. So this is a progressive way to enter it. But do you see this as a reform, Tara?
I see it like I see many reforms, very well-meaning, but how they will be implemented is another story altogether. I feel that very often a lot of these codes, notices, these circulars that go around are not completely thought through. There seems to be a sort of gap between reality and what one hopes for the best, for women. But one of the things that's very clear is that protecting women is so very important, especially working women, because they are responsible not only for the jobs that they do for their employers, but they are also responsible for looking after children and basically bear a larger burden of the work that they do at home. So when a woman is harmed, it's a dual attack upon society. It's not just the job that she's working for an employer that falls apart. Her whole family, including her children, fall apart. So I think the government needs to do a lot more. And especially, with all the cases of attacks on women that have been coming up, I mean, it's like a conveyor belt. Every day we're hearing of not one, but 3 or 4 of the most heinous acts against women. In this situation, with what's happened with the doctor in Calcutta, what's happened in cases in Mumbai, in Madhya Pradesh, and UP, I don't know whether this is really such a good idea right now. I think we need to create the infrastructure first before we tell women, yes, now you can work night shifts. There's no coercion. You have to give your consent.
But Tara, women do work night shifts. It's only formalization of it, ensuring that the state and the company owners, the management also feels responsible. Because women do work night shifts. I did my first night shift 15, 16 years ago.
Well, I've worked a lot of night shifts too.
Yes.
So I'm, and I've worked them at a time when we weren't even talking about the meaning of it. So I totally understand that, but I think that expecting employers to do everything while the government lags behind. I mean, the employer can't make the streets safe. He can't provide street lighting. He can't make buses and cars safe. Maybe the bigger firms can offer more because they have deeper pockets. But I think in the current situation, when you look at what is happening, even during day shifts, women are unsafe. They say that 75% of sexual harassment cases during day shifts are not even reported by women. So, I mean, I feel that this is going to make some things harder for women.
Okay. We have an employer on the show, Soumya. What are your thoughts, particularly with regards to with the onus coming on the employers? You say that the intent has to be right, but this is also about greater responsibility. And has the state shifted the burden on employer more here? Because if the street are not very well lit, if there are challenges of this nature and there are cultural connotations attached also, then how do you deal with it?
I think it only helps the case of women and also the employer. I'll also give an example. So in my previous career, one of the previous careers, I was working with a PSU managing a shop floor, right? Last quarter of every year, we used to run 3 shifts. And then every time I would say sign on a works contract to hire laborers, I had to say that, I can only keep people who can do 3 shifts so that my resources are fungible. So then earlier women used to be completely out of it. Now I think something like this only creates more opportunity. We're talking about, okay, streets are not well lit and there are these crimes happening. But then are we saying, like, now what has got, what has professional setting got to do with it? Are we saying, okay, streets are not well lit, so okay, the government should not allow night parties, or the government should not allow women to be on streets, or lady doctors should not be doing night shift? Because one case happened in Kolkata. The cases would happen, it'll be like a parallel intervention. So you keep fixing the society. Now it's got nothing to do with labor, profession, career, all of workplace, all of that. Now, like like Tara rightly said, there are sexual harassment cases happening in the daylight. Now then, do we say, okay, because there are sexual harassment cases happening, let's just make all the women work from home? We don't say that, right? Because that is really regressive. So I think as far as consent is there, choice is there, it is only opening it up for women. And of course, if an employer, I think we've come a long way where we have, where employers have accepted maternity breaks, paid maternity breaks, giving certain extra privileges to women because they have their home responsibility. D&I is a norm which everybody is happily accepted, acknowledging the benefits. So I think employers will take that. Some good employers are already doing it, providing cabs at night. Like I used to work for Bain. Any women leaving after 8 was allowed to book a cab for free drop. All the IT companies are picking up and dropping women at home. So I as an employer, I think it's good. It gives me more opportunity to choose talent which can work for me all the time.
Okay. Meghna, that's a fair point. It also gives women more opportunities. I would see this as this way, and their participation in economic growth story of India also becomes more, because Meghna, women as it is, they get stuck perhaps in the middle management. When it is about opening the boardrooms, there is a challenge, and if there are these further barriers, then it becomes even more claustrophobic for women.
Absolutely. I think, Marya, you've pinned the main issue, that women's safety is not just a law and order issue, it's also an economic issue, And when women feel unsafe, they're going to opt out. When they opt out, families are going to lose income. Families lose income, the economies will shrink. And India cannot become a $5 trillion economy while treating half its workforce as optional. And, if you look at even the workforce today, even in 2026, only about 1/3 of Indian women are in the labor force. This is compared to, I think, 3/4 of men. And most of them who are doing work are in informal, insecure, low-paid jobs. So when the economy tightens, remember, during any economic shock, whether it's the pandemic, whether it was a demon, recession, layoffs, it's the women who are suffering first and suffering the hardest. And let's also remember one more thing, that the first to disappear from payrolls, and this is not just because women lack ambition. If you look at girls in school, they're outperforming boys all the time. They're graduating, they're skilling up, they're showing up. But somewhere between the degree and the desk, they're vanishing. There are 51% of women graduates in India, but by the time they enter entry level, they're only 29%. By the time to mid to senior management, they're only 9%. At that CEO level, women are only 1%. So India is lacking a lot in terms of the global index also in offering equal opportunities to women and men. So I think what we need to do is we need to look at women's employment, instead of looking at it with restrictions, look at it instead with responsibility. Because if we have these labor law reforms, flip that logic that women should work night shift, not allowed to, but
in
should.
fact, while you were talking about it, there is an important data which I've just figured out. India's female labor force participation rate for ages 15 plus, in fact, reached 41.7% in 23-24, and nearly doubling from 23%, which was in 2017-2018, and this is largely driven by rural women. So there is that aspect we are perhaps not talking enough about. So Pooja, as someone who is a lawyer, who understands women coming from various walks of life to you perhaps, what are the concerns that are there particularly among women in rural pockets of India? Pooja, if you heard me. Okay. Pooja, if you heard me.
You are not audible. Could you please repeat?
My question is, what are the concerns of women, particularly coming from rural pockets of India? Okay, so I have another interesting data here, Tara. You come in on this. Rural women, in fact, led this surge at 47.6% and 76.9% in agriculture in 23-24. And urban women labor force participation ratio is lower at 28% with higher unemployment at 7.1%. That's the truth.
That's very interesting. I mean, we know that the rural workforce, almost 70% of the work in fields, for instance, is done by women. Then they go back home and they also look after their homes. Depending on which state you're in, there are benefits if couples work together. They make more money working together. But this has, I'm sure you heard about that case recently about sugarcane plantations in Maharashtra where women were being forced into having hysterectomies so that they could work longer hours and not have to worry about getting pregnant or having menstrual cycles, which made them miss days at work. So I'm sure that's a big concern for all women's empowerment groups. In cities, I think women have a little less support sometimes, especially if they're not from a particular place and they've moved there. If they're working night shifts, they are very concerned about who's going to look after their children. This is a concern even if you're working in the rural force, but if you have a larger family or a joint family living in a rural India, you tend to have more support when it comes to looking after your children or making sure there's a meal available for the elderly at home when you're busy in the fields. So I think that there's less support for women in urban areas than there is in rural areas because the structure, the nuclear family versus the joint family has broken down largely in urban areas. There's a lot more recent migration of women from one city moving to another, where again, they don't have that kind of support. So working night shifts is difficult because women have to play dual roles.
Yes.
And we don't have, now for instance, do you know, we have such a lack of creches in this country. When women come to work, whether they are working as domestic workers, whether they are working lower level jobs in a corporation, they don't know who's going to look after their children. That is the most important worry that a woman has. We have only 10% of the creches that we actually need in this country. So if you want women to work more night shifts, you have to figure out that poor woman has to figure out who's going to feed the elderly in the house, who's going to look after the kids, where are the kids going to be.
I agree with you, Tara.
Multiple challenges,
yeah, but Tara, I'm an optimist and you know that, so are all of you on this panel, because we are looking at a bright 2026 and that's why we are saying that, well begun is perhaps half done. So let there be a conversation of this nature. I have just enough time for 30 seconds for Soumya and then the final comments to Meghna. Please go ahead. Soumya, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think, good start and good to see that at least, contrary to what we would have imagined, the rural labor participation is increasing. All fair points, Tara. I think who's going to look after children is the biggest challenge that women face. Hopefully that changes. That is changing with Zoom calls, work from home, gig economy, freelancer.coms of the world. I think at least women have a lot of options to be financially independent, and initiatives like this only widens the funnel even more.
And we speak about Adi Abadi Pura Hak, 50%, that's the population. Women have been the driving force behind multiple state chief governments returning to power. It has happened only last year in Bihar. Women shaping politics, so they have to be seen in important places and should be about their contribution in the organization rather than they becoming headaches if they are not able to do certain shifts, Meghna.
True. I think, this is not about forcing women to work at night. This is about giving women real choice.
Opportunity.
And choice that is backed by infrastructure, choice that backed by enforcement, and choice that's backed by respect. So I think an Atmanirbhar Bharat cannot be built on unpaid female labor and restricted female mobility. And Atmanirbhar Aurat is not a slogan, she's an economic necessity. And I think that's what we should lead with as we enter this new year.
Absolutely. Women are an economic necessity. They are an important participant. You have a woman, a finance minister who has broken many a glass ceilings already in the number of budgets that she has presented, and she'll be presenting another budget on 1st of February. Thank you so much, and wishing all of you a very happy new year, Tara, Soumya, Meghna and
Thank you,
Pooja.
thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Same to all of you.
That's all from me on this edition of the News Track. To all the viewers, wishing you a very healthy, prosperous and successful 2026.
On Democratic Newsroom, one of the fiercest debates here on India Today, I had a suggestion to make that India Today should take the lead in making air pollution a national issue with a public awareness campaign of the kind the nation needs. India Today ensure that in the spirit of the Democratic Newsroom, make